If you've ever played a wizard in Skyrim, you've probably been to the College of Winterhold and done the quest line there, and you may have been impressed when you saw the college for the first time, but probably began to feel like something was missing, that the place was, well, a little small and didn't have an awful lot going on there. There was a distinct lack of students, a distinct lack of studying, and in fact a distinct lack of any feeling of it being a college. It felt more like a place that was built for the Dragonborn to have a questline in. Well, fear not, for with a few mods you can transform this desolate and quiet college into a thriving, interesting and populated place of higher learning. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to episode 105 of the Skyrim Mod Sanctuary. Now, to start this transformation off, I'm going to begin with a mod called Obscure's College of Winterhold, which is an overhaul mod that changes quite a few things around the college. Probably one of the most important changes is also one that's not actually immediately obvious, and that's the fact that this mod almost doubles the number of rooms available in the college. And the reason you might not notice instantly is the way it does it is it adds 2 more towers. Now, this change can be seen from the outside of the college if you're paying attention, but honestly you could miss it at first glance. But when in the college, it really looks very, very similar indeed, and you really could be forgiven for not even realising that the 2 new doors weren't there the entire time. So the college itself feels very similar, and yet now it has twice as many towers. You now have a Hall of Acumen, and in that particular hall there is a cantina, which is a great addition. It comes with a bartender who also doubles as an alchemy teacher, which does sort of make sense. This canteen is actually reasonably large, and it will be open in the evenings. I mean, it's open all the time, but there will be people there drinking and getting served. There are dining areas, and it does actually fix something that really was very wrong with the vanilla college, and that is the fact that there was nowhere to really meet and socialise, and seeing as most of the mages would feel uncomfortable going into town to the inn where they were most certainly not welcome by, most people, having an on-site cantina really makes a huge difference. Over in the new Hall of Diligence, there are now offices for all of the teachers for the 5 spellcasting schools and 2 for the magical crafting schools, alchemy and enchanting. Yes, there are actually teaching rooms for the teachers to teach students, and the teachers will actually sit in those rooms for a few hours a day. I know a lot of the teaching probably went on in the Hall of Elements in the vanilla game, but honestly, having actual teaching rooms where the teachers can teach those individual schools, can actually have books, study aids, and take 1 or 2 students through some of the theory before practicing it in the Hall of Elements makes perfect sense. It really does fit superbly well into the idea of having an actual college. There are also a lot more dormitories in these 2 towers for more students, including the missing apprentices and one for Septimus Cygnus, who obviously is no longer living there. And one of the things I loved about his room was it did look like no one had been there for a long time, whereas all of the other rooms showed signs of having been lived in, and they all felt a little different as well, sort of reflecting the character of the student that was actually staying there. So if the student was the sort of student who was interested in making beer, there were actual signs of a love of beer in that actual room, and I did like that. The mod also changes a lot of the other areas that you generally don't think about and makes them look, well, more appropriate for a college, a little less like it's a haunted castle and more like it is a college where people study, people eat, you know, sit around and chat with each other and just do generally normal things. The outer courtyard has these signs as well, with a few tables being placed so that people could just sit and have a quick lunch whilst enjoying some fresh air. And quite possibly one of my favourite additions from this mod is an actual notice board. Close to the entrance there are two boards, one with a map of the place, which does make sense, and another with a board filled with notices. And it's just got lots of little things that you can read that give you a bit of background, perhaps some lore, or just perhaps a little entertainment that makes you relate to the people there a little more. It also has an actual timetable for when you will find the different teachers in their teaching area, in their office, so that if you need to find them you can check the notice board, see if they're in their office, and if not then go find them somewhere else. Little touches like that I really do appreciate. And it's often the little details that have quite a big impact with this mod. Things like having doors on all of the bedrooms. Now I've seen a mod that did that before, but this mod has it included, and it actually makes the place feel bigger. That may sound a little strange because the central hallway will actually be a little smaller now because all of these doors could be closed, but it gives you this feeling of lots of different rooms rather than just sort of one open hallway with alcoves where the beds sit. So again, it makes it feel like there are a lot more little spaces, there's a lot more privacy, and it feels a lot more like an actual college. The doors now have plaques on them that will tell you who is in that room, and those plaques do actually change over time as you progress through the main quest. I'm not going to tell you too much about that just in case, I don't want to go for spoilers. But little touches like that really do make a difference. In fact, there are actually a lot of other changes, too many for me to list here in this video. Changes to some of the NPCs, changes to some of the places, entrances to places like the Midden. There's a full list of changes you can find on the mod page itself. I highly recommend you go and look through them, and honestly, if you are looking to do another playthrough as a mage and you want a much richer experience in the college, you want a feeling of actually being at a college, this is a great mod. It does exactly what it says it does. It overhauls the college, it makes it feel more like an actual college by making it feel bigger and just making more sense. If you've ever been to college, you probably know what I mean. One mod that I highly recommend using alongside Obscures is Immersive College NPCs. This is unsurprisingly a mod that adds a lot more NPCs to the college. It adds 5 novices, 3 mages and a groundskeeper. Yes, there is now somebody who wanders around sweeping up and sort of just generally keeping the place from falling apart, which does make sense in a college. It also adds 8 magical guardians, 4 of which are on the ground guarding the main entrance and the Hall of Elements, and the rest wandering around the walls up top. This is actually a fairly reasonable addition, seeing as the locals don't like the college very much, and there probably does need to be some sort of defense system to discourage them from, you know, running into the College of Winterhold and throwing all the mages off a tall rock. And it also actually adds a lot of workers to the Sarthal excavation, which makes perfect sense as well. You know, I mean, mages are not going to be doing all of the digging themselves. In fact, they're probably going to want other people to do it, so they would have hired workers, and this mod actually adds them. This mod by itself would make the college feel busier, but when you use it with Obscures, it works even better because Obscures actually adds rooms for those NPCs, and they will wander around, sleep in the correct bed, and just behave as you would expect novice mages to behave in the college, and that just adds to the feeling of it being a real college. The only downside is that because it adds more NPCs, it can affect your performance. I did notice one spot right outside the college where you meet Feraldra at the start. If I looked at the college during the day when the novices and the mages were practicing their spells in the courtyard, my frame rate would drop. It was pretty specific. If I looked in that direction at night, no problem. If I actually travelled across the bridge into the college, it cleared up straight away. And of course, if I looked away from the college or moved just a little distance away, there was no problem. So it's a very isolated spot for me, but you should be aware of this. You're adding more NPCs. They will be doing things, especially at certain periods of the day. They'll be throwing spells at each other, and that could affect your performance a little. So keep your eye on that. One mod that I highly recommend is actually by the same mod author as made Obscure's College of Winterhold, and that is the Miscellaneous College of Winterhold tweaks. And this is just a sort of general tweak and fix mod that tries to get things that go on in the college to make more sense or allow you to fix things. So for example, if those illuminated magical pillars on the bridge go out, you will now be able to relight them. It also tweaks a lot of the quests and the NPC behaviour during those quests to make more sense. I don't want to give you a list of what it changes because it would contain spoilers. I can tell you when I did notice those changes, they did make sense to me. However, probably the best tweak in this particular mod is the one that, well, does the least important thing, but it's the thing that grabbed my attention the most. Automatically opening and closing gates. Every single solitary time you go in and out the gates, they will open and close for you automatically, as magical gates should. Yes, I know it's a small thing, but I like it. I'm easily amused. Leave me alone. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all we have time for in this video. Now, I've already started planning the next episode in this series, but I can't say for sure when it's going to be. I would love it if you could join me for that or any of my other videos, and I look forward to seeing you there. But until then, remember, as always, have fun.